All right, what is up, everybody? Welcome to my channel. My name is Destiny, and today we're going to be diving into my neurodiverse journey. Let's go. Right, so today I want to share my story, some struggles, and some successes, and how embracing neurodiversity has shaped who I am. Okay, so if you are cleaning, if you are traveling, if you are doing something that is going to take about a half hour to 45 minutes, check this video out. Check out this podcast, okay? Because we're going to get into a lot of topics and I'm going to touch on a lot of subjects that you guys may be interested in, all right? This is going to be a raw, honest, and solo podcast. I'll talk about my early experiences, my diagnosis process, and how I navigate the world now as a diagnosed neurodiverse individual. So, this is in hopes that my journey resonates with others and creates more understanding and awareness about neurodiversity, especially in minority communities. Little disclaimer, please keep in mind that this is in fact my own personal experience and any action should be taken under the care of a licensed practitioner. A lot of people don't believe in seeking a diagnosis in the minority community. Most of our cultures see it as a bit of a luxury to be defined by our shortcomings and not feel shame. But that perspective seems to be an issue in itself now that we are gaining new information every decade on how mental health affects our everyday lives. Shame, it comes with a criteria. Getting diagnosed for something automatically feels like you lack, you're broken, or you're stupid. So people hear bipolar, depression, anxiety, or ADHD and feel the need to ignore it. Accepting what feels like a permanent defeat just doesn't seem like something our ancestors would approve of. My theory is every generation has its battle, and my generation's battle is mental health. As a kid, I could tell a very distinct difference between me and the other kids. It was kind of like natural for the kids to like socialize amongst each other and play, while for me, it was like a nerve-wracking task. The best I could explain it is this like adrenaline rush during an interaction and then not being able to breathe or see after that interaction. Also feeling like after these interactions, my body would not feel how it felt before we started talking. Friendship was never initiated by me personally. Not because I didn't want friends, but because I either never thought to initiate conversation or I just didn't know how. It would have to be someone approaching me or an adult coordinating games or sports. Big events like performances, church, large crowds like malls would put me in a state where I wouldn't feel like I was in my body anymore. I would become uncomfortable, but say, do, and just be whatever I needed to be in order to push past those times. No matter how bad or uncomfortable it made me feel, I always thought it was normal and that every kid has those experiences too. This would leave me drained for short and long periods of time. It caused me to become so irritable that in some cases I would become vocal in a negative way or become destructive. Academically, if I was really good, then I was really good. But if I was really bad at it, then I was really bad at it. There was no in between. Math was always good, English was good, science was good, but social studies, forget about it. Which is ironic because I am pretty big on history now. I remember teachers telling my parents that I may have ADHD. Same with one of my other siblings. But it was never fully understood because I can walk, talk, dress myself, and put a fork in my mouth. I was born in Queens and raised on Long Island. My parents both had good jobs and worked full time to move us out of the projects, with so many odds against them. So many odds. There were so many factors that played out as to why I hadn't been diagnosed. The next sign that came into my life was college. I remember starting college and things being great, but then quickly started to decline as the responsibility and workload got heavier. So I thought to myself, why don't I see a doctor? I didn't have any peers or anything, and I really wanted to thrive at my campus, so I sought out the school's psychiatrist. After a long talk, maybe about 2 hours, he told me that I had major depression and ADHD, and he wrote me a script. When I walked out of the office and looked at the script, I saw the word Ritalin and threw that script right away, which is crazy because come to find out, I actually needed it. Sometimes lack of knowledge can really hold you back. Which brings me to 2 years ago when I found myself in a situation I just couldn't get out of. I was in constant turmoil and battle with someone that would pull me in to abuse me and just spit me back out. Things were very physical, toxic, and damaging not only 2 years ago, but my entire childhood. Topic real quick on something that I noticed growing up, and that's this. What we don't speak about as minorities is what I call the culture barrier effect. Now, the culture barrier effect is when parents from another country with strong values comes to America and tries to raise children with the same morals and values of that country or region. For example, let's say a couple from Nigeria moved to China. They start a family. This Nigerian family is now the minority. Now, although the children are still Nigerian, they are still accustomed to their surroundings in China. This is when the children start to learn and understand different things outside of the Nigerian culture. When you have two strong cultures merge, the Nigerian parents will eventually clash with their children born and raised in China, causing the culture barrier effect. Now, that was just an example, and this is not to say that this happens all the time. This is what I've learned from my own experiences and years of research on why minorities with strong cultures in America have high rates of abuse. High rates of abuse can lead to disorders if the abuse happened in the womb or early on in childhood. This is especially traumatic for children who are undiagnosed that are stuck in these situations. One, because their family is not thinking to seek help. Their family, their friends, they all are abiding by a culture that they have known their whole lives, that have been passed down generation to generation, and mental health really wasn't a part of some of these cultures. And I have this document here that I wanted to read to you guys on just, different cultures and countries' perspectives on mental health. It says in some Asian cultures, such as China, Japan, or Korea, there's a concept of face, which refers to one's reputation, dignity, or honor. People may avoid seeking help for mental health problems or disclosing their condition to others, as they may fear losing face or bringing shame to their family or community. In some African cultures, such as Nigeria, Ghana, or Kenya, there is a belief in witchcraft, which refers to the use of supernatural powers to cause harm or misfortune. People with mental health disorders may be accused of being witches or possessed by evil spirits and may face violence or ostracism from their family or community. In some Latin American cultures, such as Mexico, Brazil, or Argentina, there is a value of familialism, which refers to the importance of family loyalty, solidarity, and support. Family members are expected to prioritize family interests over individual preferences. People with mental health conditions may seek emotional and practical help from their family members first. So you can imagine how some people may be brought up in our country, or if you're not from America, brought up in America and not getting these treatments or not seeking the help that they need because their parents or their surroundings come from a culture that has never touched on mental health or that has other ways of dealing with people that have mental health issues, which could either lead to abuse, trauma, or just causing people to live a life without getting the support that they need. So in India is estimated to have a treatment gap of 95%, with only 1 in 20 individuals receiving treatment. Research into this gap in treatment suggests multiple factors in play, such as stigma, poor mental health awareness, discrimination, a lack of trained professionals, poor help seeking, and low availability and thus accessibility to these services across the country. That being said, India was one of the first low and middle income countries to develop a national mental health program as a means to address the mental health needs of the population. And then I wanted to read Colombia for you guys because it says, much like in South Africa, an understanding and appreciation of the population, wide exposure to violence in the country's history is vital. This is because the historical ramifications of 60 years of armed conflict, high rates of homicide, gang activity, gender-based violence, and intra-family violence is important context for understanding the impact on mental health in the country. As a result, there is a significant proportion of the population affected by trauma. Alcohol misuse and illicit drug use also contribute to a burden on these services. Also, around 15% of the Colombian population has been displaced by the conflict and, as a result, have additional needs that are hard to address in the communities that they live in, which further increases the risk of poor mental health and lack of access to support. So, if you are in a situation to where you have to fight for your life, to where you're looking for food, to where you're around a bunch of violence, to where you have to basically take care of your basic needs, which are not being met. This could cause a lot of things to go untreated. So just keep that in mind, when we're talking about the culture barrier effect. When our families come here, some of them don't see a reason to see a doctor for mental health. People are entitled to their own beliefs. Yes, that is true. The way I see it, our country is a mix of all different types of people. Things like depression and mental health don't see color. If we look at the opportunity we have here, we could save many moms, dads, brothers and sisters, friends, and children. People who are suffering every day and don't have support. Okay, now back to it. So I'm in a situation and thinking to myself, like, there has to be a way out. I had been stuck in this room for so long, feeling like I would never be able to get it together, like I would never be able to leave. Me believing that one day my abuser would see how much he violated my life and things would eventually get better. But it didn't. It just kept getting worse. One day I got tired of it and told myself I need to take control of my own destiny. Because at this rate, I was going to either be in jail or dead. I felt manipulated by everyone in my surroundings to the point where I thought I was going crazy. So I decided to speak to a therapist. The first six, they came and went. They were asking me questions to keep the time up and get paid. Most of them barely even engaged with me. In the meantime, I was learning about ADHD and how it impacts my life. So many different topics flew by. One day I stumbled upon this topic, ADHD versus autism. The article was so fascinating to me because there were so many similarities, yet so many differences. Honestly, what really caught me off guard was that I could relate to both. Then I had a session with this therapist and she opened up my eyes. She was so nice, she was mad cool, and she was so sweet. She told me that I definitely have ADHD and I should get tested for autism because she suspects that I may be on the spectrum. So during one of our sessions, she even told me that she could like tell right away, which was kind of like weird. See, my experience going through this was very like off-putting. A lot of the doctors I saw completely disregarded any information or facts I gave to them because I was black and able-bodied. So these people had no experience being around black people in their communities to see how socially different I was from my peers. And this made it almost impossible to get the help that I knew I needed. While seeing this therapist, I had moved to a new town, so I had to get a new doctor and a PCP. So when I go, I tell her that I want to get tested for autism. Yo, she dead giggled and said, "You don't have autism. What makes you think you're autistic?" Before I could even finish explaining, she told me that her friend's son is autistic and he can't talk and all of these other things, and but I still insisted on getting tested. So she gave me a list of dead ends, of course. I'm applying for testing, making appointments that are 6 to 8 months away to be tested, talking to numerous psychiatrists, still nothing. Then this happened. Now, when you're receiving assistance, they put you through a series of tests if you make a claim. Do with this information as you please. So, so I went to be evaluated by the state psychiatrist. After reading my paperwork, she asked me if I had been tested, and when she found out that I hadn't, she tested me. That's when I received my official autism diagnosis by the state. So while I was working with my therapist, she was giving me tips and methods to help me through the entire time. So I guess you could say at the time I was like self-diagnosed. She provided as many resources as she could to help me. She wanted to diagnose me but didn't have the credentials to do so. When I realized that I was autistic, I went through a series of emotions. Oh man, I was like, oh man, this whole time I thought I was just bad at life. Like, what does this even mean for me? Am I something? I am something that I know nothing about. Am I going to be dependent? Why didn't anyone help me? Why couldn't I have found out sooner? Like, I felt broken. One of the pieces of information that I always ran into was find support. Yo, y'all don't understand how key this is when it comes to living a life as somebody with autism. Find support, 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 support. So eventually, when I was open enough to it, I looked for some support groups or events where I could meet like minded people. There were a couple of organizations in my area that caught my eye, but the websites are so welcoming, right? And the events look like fun. I actually found a 5K for autism that was taking place at a park in my hometown. The park was right next to my childhood home, which was comforting because that park was my escape growing up. The day of the event, I was so nervous to go to this event by myself. So many thoughts running through my head, like, what if they don't think I'm autistic? What if I don't make any friends? I was talking myself in and out of going for almost 2 hours. Then, when it was time to leave, I took that leap of faith and got in the car. When I found the event, it said it was free. Just come ready to complete the run. I drove about 40-ish minutes there for them to tell me I had to pay. I had no money on me at the time, so it was a bummer, and I didn't get to go. I even tried to go in and talk to someone hosting the event, but walking through all of the people was frightening. Mostly because I was getting stared at like I wasn't supposed to be there. Most of them were white, and most people had autistic kids. Lots of kids. So I just went home and gave myself an E for effort. I have yet to find an in-person support group for autistic adults and minorities in my area, but I hope to see that as people learn more about late diagnosed autism. See, the thing that really made me feel like I was part of a community was social media. So many autistic people on these platforms sharing their stories, and a lot of it hits home. A lot of the DSM 5 has been interpreted to fit only one type of person. It has recently come to the surface that a lot of people get misdiagnosed or late diagnosed due to a layer or cultural ways and differences that overlap traits or show differently in different types of people, which makes sense. Now there's so many people out here sharing their experiences and ways to cope that really provide a comforting community in a world that doesn't get us. And sadly, a lot of them really don't want to. I really want to make it a point to express that the person you see today is not the person I was last year and the years before that. I have been able to achieve stability, long lasting friendships, a better understanding of myself, and do what I love the most, which is help people. Who would have thought it would be just by sharing my story? So, for me personally, I found that these daily changes have helped me since being diagnosed. Having a routine is so pleasing to my life. It's like riding a bike. It keeps me balanced and accomplished. I mess up my routine a lot, okay? So don't get discouraged when you get off track. That routine is also to help you get back on that bike when you're overstimulated or burnt out and really just don't know how to get going again. My watch. I know that I have made videos about it before, but I cannot express this enough. I set timers for everything. I used to live in the shower, man. Like, I used to take showers for at least 1 to 2 hours. I would start cleaning the kitchen. Next thing I know, it's dark outside because I found other tasks in the kitchen that I must finish. Then, when I get into the groove of something, and get that hyper fixation, the watch lets me know when it's time to shift to other things. I'm not sure why yet, but transitioning in and out of things is a big challenge without my watch. My body just won't snap out of the task that I'm doing. Headphones, noise canceling to be exact. I have two pair to keep the outside noises at bay. Some sounds really ruin my day and can put me into the sensory overload to where I can't hear or see or take in information properly. Things like loud banging, loud machines. I live by a railroad, so when I'm passing it, there's constant trains going by. So I always have my headphones handy. Being in crowded places like the mall or an event where I may need to take a step to the side and regroup. Even at the doctor's office, when it's full, I can just have my headphones in, and it takes the heightened awareness of everything around down a notch so my brain can work and my skin will settle. Another thing is a calendar. Man, yo, my calendar is my map. I actually have three calendars: a monthly, weekly, and a daily calendar. It helps me see things in less detail. Sometimes I can only see the breakdowns of things, so having a big calendar in front of me helps me see things as more of a whole. Like when I used to just have a planner, it would suck because I would only be looking at the day, which would cause me to over plan or double plan because I can't see the entire timeline. Some of the things that go on my calendar are events, appointments, birthdays, and holidays, but also deadlines. I have learned to give myself deadlines so that I am not rushing through things or taking too long. Doing this helps me set a pace. If I plan to finish a project by Saturday, then I can physically see how much time every day I can spend on this project. So if I need to take breaks or I'm down about not making progress, I can look at this huge calendar. I mean, my calendar takes up my entire wall, see? And see that I have plenty of time to rest and still get the project done. So it's not just about planning when to do things, it's also about planning when not to do things. Planning that downtime, that decompression time, is essential to me being able to be productive, successful, and live a healthy life. Ooh, I love this. Oh, let's talk about STEM toys. STEM toys, these made me feel like a kid again. It's a solution I definitely didn't know I needed. After my diagnosis, people were talking about the power of stimming, and I said to myself, okay, I'll give it a go. So I bought this Shishibo cube. It's like a dimensional cube that you can shift into shapes, and it has all of these like psychedelic colors to it. So it's very pleasing to the eye. Man, when I got it, I was playing with it all day, every day for hours. That thing did not leave my sight. After a while, though, that slowed down because I couldn't play with it and do other things at the same time. So I got other toys, and it just kind of led to me having a bag full of STEM toys. I noticed that when I would be overstimulated and things would happen, I would be highly irritable and self sabotage a lot just so that people would get away from me and life would stop. Anything you wanted me to do, I would make myself the worst candidate. If I don't want to talk to you, And you do, I will make sure you never come talk to me again. And it was really bad, honestly. Like, who would have thought that stimming for about 15 minutes could bring me back to center and put me in a position where I could feel better than I was before I got overstimulated? These days, I'm learning to remember to stim a lot more. Which brings me to another tool I used when overstimulated, and that's my weighted blanket. I really don't want to get too deep into this one, but it's a hidden gem. If you are autistic and you don't have a weighted blanket, get you a weighted blanket. Get you a weighted blanket. Get you a weighted blanket. Journaling is good too. I feel like we have to process so many emotions that we don't know where to put them. So I like to write an entry every day. Sometimes I'm writing all day, but it helps because when a situation happens, I don't know how I feel about it. But if I write down what happened and read it, it can help me process the series of events that took place. And doubling back on the first thing I spoke about, the last thing I want to talk about that really helped me is support. I cannot stress enough how hard it was to walk this journey alone. If you are seeking a diagnosis or you feel like you may be autistic and don't know where to start, it starts with support, man. 9 times out of 10, if you are autistic and an adult, you've been through some past traumas that will only be brought to the surface while you're on this journey. This journey is filled with healing, hurting, realizations, and empowering processes that feel like an internal battle between you and you. And really, it is because once you know this about yourself, there's really no going back. And that grief can make things worse without support. Being able to open up and be around like minded individuals will definitely help you through. As I started to reach out online and join these groups, I started to see more black people. Not a lot, but the more I would go through these haystacks, I would find a needle or two, if that even makes sense. Why is a needle in a haystack? Someone explain it to me. Most of them had visible traits and were diagnosed early. The others had been through some experiences that led them to their diagnosis, like me. We would share our experiences and seem so lost and stressed because we lived in communities where our own people bashed mental health. Having to figure out how to navigate through life in the neurotypical world as an autistic person, we spend our lives trying to adjust, trying to do more of this and not do more of that. We don't fit into the normal sense of being in terms of societal standards. Now, imagine being autistic and black. You don't fully fit into the black stereotypes. We may look black, but talk and act white, or because we aren't ghetto enough or come with a certain attitude, we are constantly singled out and alienated from our people. Now, imagine being autistic, black, and a female. I mean, it goes on and on with how these layers are applied. I really feel like shedding light on autism will raise awareness in minority communities. This is the stuff people are afraid to talk about. This is why I started the channel. But there's another reason that really put this thing into action. It's the workplace. No matter how many jobs and what I did, I would find myself coming into these situations where I was misunderstood, uncomfortable, targeted, and just couldn't receive the accommodations I requested. Unfortunately, this is the case for many autistic adults. With the rate of diagnosis rising, so is unemployment. I was so tired of these blockages, so I did some thinking and could only come to this conclusion. You can't make people treat you a certain way or act a certain way. So, the only thing that I want everyone to take from these episodes is just come and listen. Throw this on when you're doing something and just listen to autistic people's experiences and how they express themselves. No two autistic people are the same, true, but you can learn a lot of things for when you work with an autistic person, hire an autistic person, at the library with an autistic person, and so on. I would imagine for people that aren't autistic, having to learn about autism is a concept that is hard to grasp. I mean, it's hard for us, and we are the autistic ones. I learned by relating. It's so much easier when you relate, right? So instead of asking people that work 80 hours or more a week to change their entire perspective because I just walked into the door, I want to help spread awareness so that the world knows what autism is, what it is not, and how it plays out in every race and every sex. So far, I've learned so much. The door to mental health really gave me an understanding of myself and my surroundings. It showed me how I work, so I know how to move. Being diverse isn't a limitation, it's a different way of experiencing the world. If you're on this journey, remember, take one day at a time, celebrate small victories, and know that your unique perspective has the power to change the world. You're not alone, and there's a whole community here to support you. There's going to be some good information on this channel. I think we are off to a great start. And if you're here from TikTok, thank you for being here. And if you're new, thank you for joining us. And I'll see you guys next time.